Well, I want to welcome everybody who's going to be watching this to a very special event. And it's myself, David Nathan, known in certain circles as the British Ambassador of Soul. And I am delighted to be talking about one of my absolute favorite subjects of all time, which is Miss Aretha Franklin. And who better to talk with about Aretha Franklin than with one, two, three, four, five, six. I have to make sure I'm counting correctly. Two, three, four, five, six ladies who spent some time with Aretha during many years as publicists with Aretha. They are collectively known most suitably as Aretha's Angels. And I am delighted to be talking to Aretha's Angels today and to be sharing our experiences of working with Aretha and getting to know her and just to set it up for everybody. My first experience with Aretha was in 1966. Now, I know some of you weren't born in 1966, or you might have been very, very young, but I was a teenager in London. And I was so moved by hearing Aretha's voice because, back then her records were not released in Britain. She was on Columbia Records. She wasn't with Atlantic yet. And she was not really a mainstream artist. And I was so moved by hearing her voice, I decided to write a letter to her. And of course, back in 1966, how are you going to write a letter from London? So I sent it to her. I sent two letters. First one I sent was care of her father's church. So all it said was, Miss Aretha Franklin, care of Reverend C.O. Franklin, New Bethel Baptist Church, Detroit, Michigan, USA, because we didn't have things like zip codes. You know what zip code was in London. So, and I hoped she would get it. And then nothing happened for a while. So, well, maybe I should send a backup letter. And I had a promotional photograph from CBS Records in London, and it had the address of manager on it, which I didn't know at the time. Manager was also her husband. So I sent this letter, and lo and behold, 3 months later, my dad calls me from the shop that he's working in downstairs. He says, David, letter from America. So I come rushing up down the stairs, look at the letter. Oh my God, this is a letter from Aretha. And, it was so, and everyone says to me, do you still have the letter? Well, 1966. If I had known then what I know now, of course, I would have framed it. But I was just beside myself. The fact that she had taken some time to write. She said, I don't know had any fans in England. Well, of course, she didn't at that point. So, because nobody barely knew her. And New York was out in England, really. Anyway, but she said, well, I hope to come to England. And thank you so much for writing. And then later that year, I spoke to her as my Christmas bonus. I called through the international operator and called and spoke to her. I remember, the operator put the call through to Detroit, and Ted White answered the phone. He said, "Who's calling?" He said, "David from England." And so I said, "Can I speak to Miss Franklin?" He said, he put the hand over the phone. He said, "Aretha, phone from London." And she came to the phone and she said, "I've never spoken to anyone in England before." And I said, "Well, I'm David, I wrote to you and you wrote back to me. I just called to wish you a Merry Christmas." And she was like, "Thank you." And she was so quiet, very quiet. And she said, well, I just signed to Atlantic and I'm going in the studio. And I said, "Well, I can't wait to hear your music," because you had to keep the call short. And so that was my introduction to Aretha Franklin. And I feel very honored that the way my life has developed from being that fan in London, writing that letter, to all the decades of doing interviews and getting to know her to the point where I could honestly say it has been and was, and I still think of as being a friend. So with that as my background to tell you who I am in relationship to Aretha and why she's important to me, I want to welcome Aretha's Angels. And these are the ladies, as I say, who've worked with Aretha from 1985 to 2018, the esteemed publicists. So let's start with Tracey Jordan. Hi, Tracey.
Hi, David. Hi, Angels. Hey,
Yes.
Kay.
And then next up is Jackie Rhinehart. Hi, Jackie.
Hello.
Yes. And then Audrey. Now, Audrey, I'm going to have to say please say
name.
your full name, Audrey.
Well, my maiden name, which I used when I was at ARETHA'S,
Yes.
LaCatis, but then my married name, even though I'm no longer married, but is Oneiyke.
Okay. Welcome, Audrey.
Thank you.
And LaJoyce Brookshire, Shire or Sheer?
Shire.
Correct me, Shire. Okay, the correct pronunciation. So LaJoyce Brookshire. And then, say hello, LaJoyce.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. And
Nice
then Gwendolyn Quinn. Hi, Gwendolyn.
Yes, hi.
Yes.
Hello, everyone. And I just wanted to say,
and,
David, I wanted to add this because Aretha knew about the angels, because I told her one day, I had showed her a picture. It was Jackie Rhinehart and someone else. I can't remember. And I told her about the angels. She said, she laughed. She said, "I'm really the angel." She said, "I'm really the angel." Yeah, that was. I'm glad that she signed off. She approved of the angel. So
good,
that was
good. Oh, and
Maybe
finally,
the angelettes.
And finally, we have one other lady to introduce, which is Robyn Ryland-Sanders. Hi, Robyn.
Hey, Robyn.
All right.
Hey.
So we're going to start out, and we can start out by talking about what your first reaction was when you met the Queen of Soul. And do you remember what impression you got of her in that first meeting? And we're going to do it in the sequence in which you all worked with her. So Tracey, you're up. What was it like when you first met Aretha? What was your reaction and what was your first impression?
The very first time I met Aretha, I was about 15 years old. I was friends with Calvin Lockhart's son, and he said, like, "Oh, come on, we're going to go over to my friend's house." And his friend was Teddy. And we went to Aretha's brownstone on the Upper East Side. And I had no idea. I walked in, and she came out of the kitchen with her like apron on and stuff like that, and looked at me like, you know how Aretha, when she first meets you, she used to give you the once over, like, "Who are you? Why are you in my house? Why are you around my sons? Where do they know you from?" Like the whole 20 questions. And I was just like, awestruck. I was just like, I had no idea we were going to her house. And,
wow.
it was just amazing. The first time I worked with her was at ARETHA'S. I guess it was like 1986, latter part, maybe the beginning of 87. And I went to Detroit for the video shoot of Jumpin' Jack Flash.
Yes.
And Keith Richards, Ronnie Wood, Steve Jordan, Aretha, Abby Conowitch, Jane Rose, who managed Keith Richards, were all on set. And I walked onto the set, and Aretha was seated behind the piano, and she had her hair like it was like the Patti LaBelle days where it was sticking up on end, blue black lipstick, a spaghetti-strapped zebra catsuit, and she was at the piano, and I was like, oh my God, how am I going to tell her that, like, she needs, like, I don't know, something else, something is missing. And I had never, she didn't remember me from, like, when I was 15, but I just walked over to her, and I was like, "Hi, Miss Franklin, I'm Tracey Jordan," because I had spoken to her on the phone, and I was like, "You know what you really need to set this outfit off is, like, a leather jacket." And she looked at me like, "You're going to tell me about fashion?" And, like, I ran over to Abby. Abby gave me his credit card, and I went to like Wilson's House of Leather and Suede and bought like 5 different jackets, brought them back to the video shoot, and she selected a motorcycle jacket, and she put that on, rolled up the sleeves, and the outfit was complete. And I don't know if you guys.
Wow.
That's her, Keith, and Elliot Laurie and Jane Rose over here, and Keith in the middle. And then Aretha's brother Cecil was still alive at the time, he and Ronnie Wood and Keith and Steve Jordan all disappeared into like the trailer of the Rolling Stones trailer, doing God knows what. I don't even want to know. But like we went on from there, and that was like my first time. And then she called me on the phone, and she, as she would once you were her publicist, and left me this message. And I got home from work and put on the answering machine, and there was Aretha Franklin, and I was like, oh my God! And I pulled it out of the answering machine, and I still kept it to this day. So that was
Really?
my first time.
Wow. Amazing. Wow. That's quite a story, Tracey. That's quite a story.
Yes.
All right. Well, next, Audrey. So tell us.
Jackie.
Jackie. Sorry, Jackie, you're next. So Jackie.
Yes.
So tell us your the first time you met Aretha, how did you respond? And what was your first impression?
The first time I met Aretha, actually, I wish I had my picture in front of me, and I will get it at some point in time so that I can show you. I did happen to have a copy of that because I rarely took photographs with the artist, but I did at that time. I remember because of the necklace I had on, which had cowbells on it, and it would ring all the time. But I needed the ringing because Aretha was traveling from her home in Detroit on the bus, of course. And,
Yes.
Arista is located on 6 West 57th Street. So we were in a very she part of town in New York City. But what was interesting was that when she arrived, it was truly like she arrived with her court, because we were all waiting. You don't know what time she's going to get there. So you're anticipating. You actually have a lookout, almost like a sentry. When is Aretha arriving? You don't know. And remember what time this is. So we don't even have cell phone in that sense.
Right.
So she's arriving, and when she comes, of course, and she gets off the bus, she pulls up right in front of Arista. However,
Wow.
you can't park in front of Arista, but the whole bus just comes and it stops there, and everybody, eventually everybody gets off, but first Aretha gets off, and she comes out. She's got on her flip flops and shorts, and she comes into Arista that way. So that was my first meeting. I said, "Oh, she comes with the crew, the camp."
What did you, when you actually got to like shake her hand or say hello to her, how was it for
Actually,
you?
and not only did I shake her hand, it's interesting because she did not feel, in my first impression of her, I didn't feel this detachment. I really felt very, very comfortable with her, because
Right.
the photograph of her and I is we're hugging. And I
Okay.
think that's very odd, and Aretha's
Yes.
just standing there, and I'm
Yes.
just hugging her. So she's, I didn't feel detached. I didn't feel that from her. Yeah,
Right.
which is interesting.
Brilliant. I love these stories. They're just really great. All right. So after Jackie is Audrey. Audrey, your first impression, when your first reaction, and then your first impression.
Well,
So Jackie had booked her on the Phil Donahue shows, but I was there to execute it. So I had to go over to the Plaza Hotel to pick her up and ride with her down, to the taping. And she comes downstairs from her room, and some of her folks were already down there. And she comes over to me, and she's like, hello, and very polite, and her very, oh, I like your coat. I was wearing just a basic off the rack wool coat. She had on a sable, and I said, I like yours. Want to trade? And she said, like not even. And we laughed. And that kind of set the tone. And then in the car, that set the tone for our humor, which, like you said, a lot of people don't realize that Aretha was funny. But we get in the car, and I'm pinching my Avenue in a limousine with Aretha Franklin. It doesn't get any better than this. And she asked me, she goes, so Miss Audrey, I hear you're from Detroit. And so that advantage of that Detroit connection. So we bonded right away, and we had a great working relationship. And
Great. All right. Well, now I'm looking at my little, so next is LaJoyce. LaJoyce. You and Aretha, tell us about the first time you met. What was your impression? How was it?
The first time that Miss Aretha and I met was actually thanks to Jackie, and here is the photograph.
Oh, wow. I love it. I love it.
And this was actually probably 1989.
Wow.
Yes, Jackie?
Yes, that's it, because that's when my photograph is taken too, that day. Yep.
This day. Okay. I was a writer and producer at Sheridan Broadcasting Networks, and Jackie calls us up. Miss Aretha's coming, and you all get over here and come and have some lunch and champagne with her. And we dropped everything. It was a production day and everything. We dropped everything and ran over to 6 West, because who's going to say no to that opportunity? And here's my proof of that day. And we, as you see, she's smiling, as am I. And it was something funny about the Midwest that we spoke about. I'm from Chicago. And I said, Detroit and Chicago, same camp. She said, you know which same camp? And I said, I have family in River Rouge, and we come skating over there. She said, oh my God, River Rouge. And it's probably when they took the picture. But from the onset, I recognized her to be so comical. Yeah. Very quick. I mean, quick-witted. And that weekend there was a concert at Radio Music City Hall. Radio City Music Hall.
Yeah.
And we went to the show and went backstage, and I do have that picture somewhere else in my house. Yes. And moving forward from there, though, but when I got an opportunity to work with her on the very first day, are we going to get to this, or should I just move on from here?
No, you keep going. You go about
how,
when you first started working with her. Yeah.
It was quite by accident. She was about to get a gold record for one of her projects, and we had an all hands on deck event. And I'm just in the department at this point. I'm not her publicist, but the Queen comes to town, the entire building works. Yes, ladies? Yep. The entire building works. And so this was a grand affair, and we were going to be coming from Carnegie Hall to the Harley Davidson Cafe downstairs that we had secured for her after party. And so we're all standing around kind of chatting, doing nothing. And then somebody says, the Queen is coming, the Queen is coming. And so we all snap to attention. And I put down my champagne glass on a table. And then when she comes through and we step back, it's like parting the Red Sea. And I stepped back to let her through, and my butt hit the champagne on the table. It fell to the floor in front of her feet, and she stepped back just in time. She had on this gorgeous baby blue satin gown. I'll never forget it. I helped her gather the gown and step over the champagne, snap for the waiter, get over here, clean this up, move the crudité from one table to the next, and sat her down. And then, she immediately went to eat, of course, because, that's what we do. And she was eating from the crudité tray. And the photographers wanted to take a photograph of her. And I was like, no, you do not take a picture of the Queen when she is eating. And then I got to work. The next day. And our department head called me in and said, Miss Aretha called Mr. Davis and requested to work with you. I was like, I spilled champagne at her feet. What are you talking about? Could not believe it. I could not believe it. And then it was just on and up from there.
That's brilliant. All right. That was great, LaJoyce. That was really great. I could see the whole thing. I know all of us can actually see it in our mind's eye. We truly can. All right, so Gwendolyn, how did you come to meet with Miss Aretha Franklin, meet with and work with Aretha?
Actually, I don't have anything that exciting because honestly, I don't remember when I first met her. I know that I replaced Aretha with Jackie Rhinehart. But at the time, LaJoyce was there. I was joining the department. LaJoyce was already there, and she was already her publicist. But being friends with Jackie and then working in the office with LaJoyce, I just felt like I already knew her because Jackie would talk about her all the time. And then LaJoyce was like, Aretha's on line 3. Aretha, it was just a very chaotic environment. But so that's what I remember mostly. But she remembered. She told me one day, she said, I remember when I first met you, Gwen, she said you had really, really short hair. And she said, Clive introduced us. So it was for some event. I don't even remember at that point in time, but I stayed at Arista for like 5 years. And then after Arista, I started my own PR firm. So I lost contact with her for maybe 9 months or so. So she called and said, Gwendolyn, I heard you started your own firm. She said, I think I may sign with you. And then that's how it all started, you know, from ARETHA'S. And then, you know, when I worked at GQ Media. And then she said, well, give me your paperwork. She said, fax me your paperwork, give me your price. So I did. And she called me back. She said, I can't do that price. She said, this is what I can do. And so that's how it started. But I honestly don't remember the first time I worked with her at ARETHA'S. I don't remember what event it was for.
Right. But did you remember your first impression of her? Like when you first met her face to face? I mean, I know from my own experience of seeing other people meet Aretha that many people go into like this place of awe. They can't quite get it together. And sometimes they stumble over it. They just kind of like, oh my God, this is a legacy. This is a legend. This is an icon. This is the queen of soul. I mean, how was it for you when you first actually came face to face with her and said hello?
I honestly, I think the benefit of Jackie telling me all these stories and LaJoyce, I just felt like I knew her already. You know, I didn't feel like nervous or anything like that. I just rolled right into, you know, I knew she didn't like people gossiping and talking. I knew that, you know, saying less is more, you know, is better off. And yeah, those little things I picked up, but no, I wasn't nervous. Not at all.
All right. Well, now we go to Robyn. Okay. All right. Well, we will continue on then, and we'll ask Robyn to join us once she gets that all sorted out. So the next thing is, Gwendolyn, you want to know more about, I kind of told the story a little bit about how I first got to interact with Aretha, but you want to talk to me about my first time actually meeting her?
Yeah, David, I was just so, I knew that, you know, Aretha and I talked about you a lot, and she really had high regards for you and definitely considered you a friend outside of being a journalist. But I was just floored when I found out how long you guys knew each other. I was like, I was a little girl at that time. And so share with us, I mean, because I think all of us publicists have worked with you at some point, you know.
That's true. Absolutely. 100%. Yeah.
And so share with us some things like we don't know about her, like back then at that time.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, you know, that time that I spoke to in December of 1966, she was just about getting ready to go into the studio for the first time for Atlantic. I didn't actually have any conversations with her in that first year. Of course, I was aware of what she was doing, and I wrote some pieces about Aretha for different magazines in London. I think I did write something for Blues and Soul. Just to kind of as an aside, that the word got back to Jerry Wexler that I had written these articles, and I guess the person in London had sent him to, the Atlantic person had sent the articles to him. And so one day I get this package in the post from Jerry Wexler, and he says, thank you so much for promoting Aretha in England, you know, and he sent me a copy of her then new 45, was a promo copy on Atlantic, Baby, I Love You. And I thought, you could not talk to me at that point. No one could. I was like, I can't, I mean, you know, just trying to get the scenario. I was, how old was I? I wasn't even 20, I was 19. I was 19 years old. And getting that from Jerry Wexler was amazing. So anyway, I fast forward to the next years when I actually met Aretha. So they set up this European tour, and the person at Atlantic in London was a lady called Janet Martin, and she said, well, Aretha's going to be arriving at Gatwick Airport, not Heathrow, because she's already begun her European tour, and so she'll be coming from Sweden. So I went with my sister, Sylvia. We went to Gatwick. They told us when to get there. And we arrived at the Gatwick Airport, which is not a big airport. It's not as big as Heathrow. It is now, of course, bigger. But anyway, so you know, she comes through the arrival hall with Ted White, her sister Carolyn, and her two other background singers. And Aretha was short. I mean, I didn't realize, because never seen what she looked like in person, that she was short. I don't know what I expected, but she was quite short, you know, and Ted White was this like 6 foot person. I'm like, oh, hello. Anyway, so I say, you know, I go up to her and I say, hello, Miss Franklin. I'm David Nathan, and I wrote to you, and blah blah blah. She says, well, so, and my sister had some flowers, and we gave her the flowers, and I said, well, welcome to England, and she said, well, thank you, and I've met Ted White and the sister and everybody, and then they kind of ushered her out, and then the next thing was when she did a concert, she did a few concerts in London, and I took my mom to see Aretha. Took my mom and my sister to see Aretha at the Hammersmith Odeon, and the people were going crazy because all we knew about Aretha was she was this amazing. She hadn't had many hits in English. She had Respect and a couple of other things, but we didn't. She wasn't as well known as say some of the Motown artists at that point. But there'd been a lot of hype about her, a lot of press about her, and so on. So the place was full, and I turned around to my mom and I said, So what do you think? Because my mom hadn't been to any concerts. She said, because she had heard her in the household, she couldn't help but hear Aretha's records. So she said, well, she reminds me of that gospel singer, Mahalia Jackson. And I said to my mom, I said, what? Because I looked at my mother like, wow, I was shocked, that she would have that connection. I said, well, actually, Aretha grew up, listening to Mahalia Jackson. I said, Mahalia Jackson actually was almost like a second mother to her. And so then we went back afterwards. We went to we didn't go backstage. We met Aretha at the backstage door. I introduced her to my mom and my sister. And she was just really charming. She was actually completely, honestly blown away by the reaction of the audience. And I'm going to say something that may sound in these days and times slightly politically incorrect, but I'm going to say it anyway. Aretha had not, of course, this is the first time in Europe, had not played before an audience that was primarily white. I mean, people don't kind of get that in context, but really, she hadn't. I mean, she had just obviously, as she became more popular, the audience widened. But at that point, she's in front of a primarily white British audience, and they were reacting to her just as enthusiastically as the audiences in America. And that, I could tell, that really made a big impression on her because she realized her music was transcending, culture, race, and everything. And it really made a difference. One last thing to say about that first visit. I co-owned a record shop in the middle of London. It was called Soul City, and we got the word that Aretha. I told her I had a little record shop, and we got word that her and Ted were going to come and visit the record shop, right? So we stayed open late, because we thought, well, just for Aretha, And then we were sitting there waiting for her to show up. I'm like, oh my God, Aretha Franklin's going to be at the shop, And then we got a phone call saying, well, unfortunately, she's not coming. And I just crashed. No, but my first my first impression of her was she was just very polite, gracious, and just thrilled. Really, and we have to think about her age. She was 1968. She was, let me see, do some little math here. She was 24. No, she wasn't 24. She was 26 years old.
So, David, do you recall that from that year, 1968, when did she stop traveling to Europe? I mean, had she traveled several more times?
Yes. In fact, display item, Aretha Franklin at Hammersmith Odeon. This was from 1970. Wow. And that was the first time. So she did continue traveling. She performed in Europe quite a number of times through the 70s. And even the last performance that I'm aware of, one of the last performances, was after she signed to Arista. She did a Royal Command performance for the Queen. Actually, I think it was the Queen Mother. I'm not sure the Queen was there for that one. But so she performed for the Royal Command performance, which was a big deal. I mean, for any artist to perform there, and she sang Amazing Grace and one other song. Wow. I don't know what the other song. I wasn't there for that, but I do know about that. So she actually continued traveling to Europe. I think that might have been one of the last times, and that was 1981, actually. So I don't know that she traveled much. I think that might have been the last time. I don't recall that she came here much. It came to Britain after that.
Would that have been
Okay. No.
before or after the plane incident, which stopped her from flying?
Correct. Yeah. I do want to share one more thing with you about this cover story. So this was not meant to be a cover story. This was not meant to be a cover story. What happened was, so this is when my relationship with Aretha really developed as more of a kind of personal relationship. So she came to London in 1970 to do some shows, and that was the time she had the record out, Don't Play That Song. And she was booked on some television shows, and I found out from the Atlantic person where she was staying, and I sent some flowers to a hotel. And I called up, and she was traveling at the time with a lady who worked with her, who was part of Ruth Bowen. Ruth Bowen was her agent, and Queen Booking, which was amazing. You know, it was the first booking agency owned by an African American woman, and so Aretha had been with her for a long time, even up to that point. And so this woman, LaRue Mans, was with Aretha, and she had just had a baby. Aretha just had Kelf, her son, her last son, and she walked through the Top of the Pops, entrance to the BBC, and I didn't even recognize her because she had so changed how she looked. She had an afro. She was lost weight. I mean, she looked. I mean, she literally walked by. I didn't see her. So then I found out she was there, and she put my name on the list. And so I knocked on the door, and LaRue answered the door, and I said, "Who is that?" I said, "It's David Nathan." And so she'll come in. So I just was chatting with her. It wasn't an interview. I was just like, "Oh, how you doing?" "Oh, I just had my a baby, and I'm feeling good. I'm so happy to be back in Europe." And she was doing some other shows in Europe and talking about her new album that she was doing, which ended up being the album Spirited in the Dark. But it was a very kind of casual, it's really great to see you. And then I watched her go out of the dressing room onto the set of Top of the Pops and sit at the piano. And it was like this woman who I'd just been chatting to, this young woman who I'd just been chatting to, sits down at the piano and plays Don't Play That Song. And it's like, who is this? I mean, it's like, wow. I mean, that kind of going from the conversation to seeing her in action, and the studio audience, they were like, and what can you say? I mean, it was just really amazing. So that was when I felt like I really connected with her personally for the first time.
Yeah.
Oh.
Now, Robyn, are you back with us? No.
Robyn, you're on mute. She probably can hear us. Tracey said call in on your cell phone, but we can't hear you. So there's a mute somewhere. So
put on your headset, Robyn. Put on a headset and plug in.
You also might need to go to video settings and turn up your volume.
Yeah, Tracey is a pro at the Zoom.
I see, yes. Come on now, Tracey.
She is a pro at the Zoom.
Well, we had to. That's how we do all the interviews.
Yeah.
Right.
So, well, while we're awaiting Robyn fixing her connections, let's talk about some of the memorable moments. A couple of you already mentioned particular moments. I'd like to hear from you. What some of your memorable moments, and really kind of getting to know Aretha. Just any kind of memories. Of course, we'd like to focus as much as possible on the humorous moments. I have some too, which will come later. But let's hear from you about some of the moments that are not necessarily always humorous, but really memorable for you about your years of working with Aretha. Anyone can go. Whoever wants to go.
I have one.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Okay. I have one, and this is pretty fresh for me right now because I just brought my mother home to my home from Chicago, and I'm hoping she'll stay. You all pray for me. And we had gone to Detroit, Miss Aretha and I. Well, she was there, and I met her there because we were doing a live recording at her church. And my mother came. I got 4 tickets actually, for my mother and my cousins in Detroit. And the show was about to begin. And I was with my mother in the audience, and backstage, Miss Aretha had asked for me, and then someone came to get me. And they had told her, she's talking to her mother, I'll go get her. And when I got backstage, yes, Miss Aretha. And she said, your mother's here? And I said, yes. She said, go get her. And I said, okay, I did. I planned to once the show was over. And she said, no, go get her now. And I thought, okay. Like, all right. And so I went to the audience, I said, well, she's with my cousin. She said, go get them. And I got them all and came backstage. And she offered a seat to my mother and my cousins. And she sat and spoke with my mother like she did not have a show to do.
Wow.
And all I could do was wait. I just guess I'll wait.
Wow.
And I waited for her to finish. And then she asked my mother, where was she sitting? And my mother said, oh, like row, whatever she was sitting on. And she whispered to someone. And then they came and got my mother and put her on the front row.
Wow.
Mother sat.
Wow.
She was just that kind of gracious, that something that my mother never forgot.
Oh,
and
yes.
She spoke to my mother about me, and they spoke about me. My mother told me, which I thought was really pretty interesting. It's like, my mother was a teacher. You feel like you're being summoned to a conference. That's what I thought. But that was one really memorable, gracious moment that I'll never forget.
That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. And it really kind of talks to what my experience of Aretha was as well, and probably for all of you, that she really valued family, and she valued, just that kind of, that was a characteristic of her that was really important. I mean, just really. And so, that I could totally get that. Like an act. Yeah. I bet your mom was probably like, just over the moon.
I have something similar to
Yes,
that.
yes, Audrey, go ahead. Yeah.
Aretha had an album out, and getting her into New York to do press was an ordeal because she didn't fly. We had to really take advantage of the time that she was there. So she was playing a concert at Westbury Music Hall, which is out in Long Island. It's quite far. It's a beautiful theater in the round. And so I chartered a bus, hired a driver, catered the ride out there, had food and champagne and everything for all the journalists. It was packed. We get out to the venue, everybody enjoys the show, and I had arranged with Aretha that she would just do a quick meet and greet with everybody, at least, say hello, get a picture, and then, we would follow up with some of the phoners and the interviews. But it was just important to get that personal connection with the journalists. And so, after a show, you're tired, but, she just, and at this stage in her life, she wasn't, she's probably in her 50s. I can't do the math here, but, she was very gracious. And there were two people there that I remember distinctly. One was a woman named Mrs. Neal that was Clarence Waldron's teacher. And Clarence Waldron, of course, was an editor at Jet Magazine.
Absolutely.
And also a huge Aretha fan, as you are, David, and somebody that she liked a lot. And he asked me if I could invite his teacher, to go join the concert. And, even though she wasn't a journalist, I was like, oh, well, of course. And she was the loveliest woman. And I introduced her to Aretha as Clarence Waldron's teacher. And she just, it was beautiful. She was so kind to her. And she was like, well, I love Clarence, so you must have done a great job teaching him, et cetera. And that meant so much to her. She talked about it all the time to Clarence for years. And then there was another journalist there who brought his mother, Ken Simmons. You guys all know Ken Simmons.
Yeah.
She was so nice to Ken's mother, and they took pictures together. And I remember when Ken's mother passed, I sent condolences to him, and he said, I'll never forget that moment when you let my mother come to the show, and she never forgot that, and it was one of the best times of her life meeting Aretha, and that's how she touched people. So everybody likes to talk about Aretha, the diva, and she's difficult and all that, but they didn't know the real Aretha.
Exactly.
There were sides of her that people, not just her humor, but her grace and her kindness. And she didn't take any mess from anybody, be clear. But, I always defended, we were all of us here were all very, very protective of Aretha. And there was, my opinion, and I stood by it throughout my years working with her, was, when you get to her stature, not only of the success that she had, but, you got to add the talent on top of that, because the talent alone should have demanded all the respect in the world. But the talent, her commitment to civil rights and her accomplishments in that arena, the success that she had as a recording artist, you pile all that together. Yeah, if she says turn the air conditioner off, or if she says fetch me, that's just, she earned it. And all the crap that she had to put up with, from racism and in the 60s and touring, yeah, give her flowers every freaking day.
Yeah.
So you couldn't talk to me about Aretha and criticize her or say anything diva-ish or anything. You would catch it. You would catch it.
I hear you. Yes, Audrey, absolutely. Yes, Tracey, yes. Give us an Aretha anecdote.
So that was awesome. That was awesome, Audrey.
Really was.
That was so well said. My story goes back to the time when Aretha was not traveling, and we had to do all of the publicity run at her house. So I would be going to Detroit. Now, my mom is from Detroit, so I have family there, but I would have to go to Detroit to do everything. So it just got to the point where Aretha was like, you keep coming back here and the hotel is like an hour away. Why don't you just stay at the house? I mean, there's another bedroom upstairs. You could stay up there with Carolyn. And I'm like, sure, bet. So Carolyn and I were like cut buddies. And Aretha had quit smoking and she had quit drinking. So you couldn't smoke or drink in the house. And of course, Carolyn and I were like the dynamic duo of trouble. And it was like, we would take beer and we would put it in the freezer downstairs. We would wait and listen for Aretha to go to bed. And then we would sneak downstairs, get the beer, go upstairs, smoke out the window. And one night we were doing that. And all of a sudden we heard boom, boom, boom. Carolyn, Trace, what are you all doing up there? And we're like, holy shit. So we grabbed like the 12 by 12 album covers and we're like, fanning the smoke out the window, throwing the beer cans away. She never came upstairs, but what had happened was when we opened the window, we set off the alarm, which was only in her bedroom. And we didn't know that. So that was crazy. Then another story was, we did the One Lord, One Faith, One Baptism album cover and the recording. And I came up with an idea to have Norman Parkinson, who at that time was the royal photographer, do a photo session with her at New Bethel Baptist Church. So we get all the outfits and all the clothing and everything like that, and we set up the shot. And Norman Parkinson pulls out this like children's like desk that you would see in a school. And he puts it under the neon cross and everything in the background. And he goes over to Aretha and he was like, all right, Aretha, I want you to jump up on this desk. And I'm looking at him like, there is no way in heck that she is going to be jumping up on that like little desk. Dude, just forget it. Well, jump to it. She was up on the desk in a second. And that's how, we got that album cover photo. That's but amazing. She was just so special, and people didn't know her generous side. When I was sick and I had nobody would give me a job, she gave me a job. And Gwendolyn and I were going back and forth because we didn't even call it getting fired anymore. Like Hilton Kincaid would say, "You're not getting fired. You're going on vacation." Just think of it that way. So it got to the point where Gwen and I were like, okay, I'm going on vacation. She's going to call you. And then Gwen would call me back. And we would just like go back and forth like that for like, I don't know, like 5 years or something. But she knew that she knew I was having financial difficulty, and she was there for me. And she was always there for the underdog. That's something that a lot of people don't know.
That's true. Well, I just want to add one thing, Tracey. I was actually there. You actually were the publicist when I was I came to the New Bethel Baptist Church for that recording. And in fact, I had a Blues and Soul Award that had been specially made that I was supposed to present to her, and she knew about it. And then it was supposed to be on the last night, whatever night it was supposed to be. and she forgot because she got so caught up in everything. So I'm sitting there with the award, waiting for my cue to be able to go up there and present it and tell the world, tell the congregation, everyone that how Aretha was an international artist, and it just didn't happen, and I was crushed. But then I remember you took me backstage, and I presented to her backstage, and of course there's a photograph somewhere of her accepting the award. But that was an incredible experience. And I'll just say one more thing about that. The fact that I was in that church, the same church where I had written that letter in 1966. I mean, that kind of, it just blew my mind to see Aretha on, singing in the church that I've written to her at so many years ago, just to see her just singing in that environment. So that's my memory of that particular occasion. All right, so who's up next? Who wants to share an Aretha memorable? I love these stories.
I'll go next.
I love these stories.
I'll go next to piggyback off of what Tracey said. That was a really interesting time with Tracey and I was going back and forth like that. But she was so generous. When my father died, before my father died, my father and Aretha shares the same birthday, March 25th.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So one day I got her to call him, and that was really, really special. She would do things like that. And she had a concert one year. I can't remember the year, but I was working at I was working at ARETHA'S at the time at Radio City Music Hall, and she did this typically with some of the other publicists as well. She would thank us in front of the audience, have us stand up, put the spotlight on us, take you to the Kennedy Center, shout you out, and just say really, really wonderful things, which was really, really rare back at that time.
Yeah.
She didn't have to do that. She's a huge international star, but she really did appreciate us, in that way. And she did that for a lot of us. And it was just, and when I think back now, I was like, wow, that was really special to me. Those moments, the gifts that she was sent, around these holidays, or just if she's ordering, she used to like to order a lot of things, not so much online, but she would send you, boxes of steak and seafood and things like that. It was just great. She's great like that. She's really wonderful.
All right. So Jackie, do you have any particular memorable funny moment? Or
Jackie, you gotta tell the elevator story.
The elevator story? Okay.
Oh, I found the picture. Can you see it? That's the day we met.
All right.
And she's short, and you can see how short Aretha was.
Classic.
I was just thinking really why probably people felt that way about Aretha was she was surprisingly normal. In terms of the comfort level, that's how I felt about her. I didn't really find anything, if anything, she was very, very normal. More so maybe than other people would think, and maybe even more so to her detriment, in the sense that, we know Aretha loved her soap operas. We knew what time not to call because of that time. That's very, very normal. You knew that when Aretha would arrive, she would arrive dressed for comfort more than anything else. So all of those things, I think, made you have that kind of impression about her. But one of the stories that I have, of course, is that when we were doing, as Audrey was saying about getting her press done, it was often difficult to schedule, and it took a lot of coordinating because she didn't come in at a scheduled time. She was on her own in terms of her travel. So she may have stopped at the mall on her way in, or they may have decided to go get barbecue when they should have been arriving an hour before. Or Walmart. So that anything could happen on the road. So you don't really know when she's coming. So all of that adds to the hype of, oh, the queen is here, because when she finally gets there, that's how we're all waiting for her. At any rate, that was the situation when she was doing the JVC Jazz Festival, and so the concert was at Carnegie Hall. And what happened was, sorry, that's my house phone. So what happened was she was she was scheduled to come in, and it was one of those situations where she had made me find out about the air condition in every level of the hotel. And I had arranged a mini press junket in the sense that there was NBC, there was WBLS, there was CBS, there were quite a few outlets going to be scheduled to do interviews in a round robin way on one floor of the hotel. So she made me actually measure from the front door to the elevator how far it would be that she would have to walk through air condition, because I could not have asked the hotel to shut down the air conditioning in the lobby. Now, the floor that we were buying, that could happen. So I had that pretty much arranged and undercover. At any rate, when she came to the, I got a suggestion from a girlfriend who was a producer at ETV, public television in South Carolina. And she said, take her through the kitchen, Jackie. And I said, that's an excellent idea. I would take her through the kitchen. So I didn't have to concern myself about the front door, the lobby, the air conditioning, because she had threatened that if she came through that front door, through the lobby, and the air conditioner was on, she would turn back around. And she would have left the hotel. So I took her down. I was in a flux about how am I going to get her through here? And so she said, take her through the kitchen. So I was able to do that. And I told them, bring the limo to this side of the hotel and we'll take her through the side door. So we took her through the side door. We're getting in the, everybody's ready. Her security is moving. And here comes Aretha, and we're getting on the elevator. And before she gets in, the security turns to me and said, what floor is she going to be on? I said, on the 6th floor. She said, oh, she's not going to go to the 6th floor. I said, what? She won't go to the 6th floor. I just saw her at the Four Seasons on the 5th floor. She was hanging on the patio of her hotel room, had an outdoor lobby so she could walk out. And she was walking out, I'll never forget it, because she had on pantyhose, just pantyhose, walking around and going through the lobby. So I thought, well, why is this one floor difference going to make a difference? Oh, she's not going to go up that one floor. So I found electrical tape, and I took the electrical tape and I put it across the elevator where you normally look up and see the floors, and I tore that off. And then on the inside of the elevator, when you go on and you press the numbers, I took the tape again and just took it down. So I said, all right, just bring Aretha on. And so then they come and they bring Aretha, and as we're getting in the elevator, she turns to me, she said, what floor are we going? I said, we're going up, Aretha. Going up. And I press the button and we go up. And when we stop and get off, she looks around and she feels, and we go to the room, and it was Mark McEwen, I'll never forget, from CBS. Because he was so jolly and nice, and he did the first interview, and I guess we got in about 15 or 20 minutes, and then all of a sudden as she walked out, she started as if there was an earthquake, and she could just feel the tremors in her legs, and started moving and saying, no, I could feel it, like she could feel the number of floors we were on. And so she shut it down, all the interviews right then, shut them down. So I had to tell everybody, we'll have to reschedule because I wasn't able to move all of the people, all the players in that short a time to another floor. That was definitely not going to happen. But that's my Aretha story. So after that,
great.
Aretha leaves. She goes back to her suite. She calls Clive. And Clive calls me, and she tells Clive, her concert is that night. And she tells Clive that she's angry with me. And Clive calls me and says, Jackie, Aretha is that? I suggest you buy her a gift. So of course, Bergdorf's is across the street. I wear a cologne, perfume by Bulgari, and I love it. But I wasn't going to give her my fragrance. But I bought her the twin fragrance, and it's exquisite. So I bought her a gift, and I had it delivered to her hotel. And then we went to the concert. And the concert that night, she got on stage, and before she went into it, she wanted to thank all of the people, and she said specifically, and Jackie Rhinehart, thank you so much. And then she went on and gave a bravado performance, and Clive said later, she sounded much better. She performs well when she's angry. That was it. We said, yes, yes, she does. So there we go.
I love it. I love it. Well, go
I
ahead.
got another elevator story, a really quick one. When I first got to ARETHA, Lynn Volkman and Melanie Rogers and Ken Reynolds were there. And there was this story about an after party that Clive prepared for Aretha with everybody on top of the World Trade Center. And nobody had known anything about her fear of going above the 5th floor at that point in time. So they do the concert, and then everybody jumps in the limos, and they all go downtown to the World Trade Center. And Aretha gets out, looks up at the building, and says, where is this party? And they're like, oh, it's on the top floor. And she's like, nope. Turns around, gets back into the car, and leaves. Meanwhile, everybody was upstairs at the party. So.
And the press, and this is, see, and that's the other part of the story. And
Yeah.
Tracey, really, you all didn't put that information in the file. There's a file on each artist
That's
that
right.
we
Tracy.
inherit that will have their bios, other information, blah, blah, blah. So when Clive called to tell me how angry Aretha was, and he went into this story that Tracey is telling about, oh, Jackie, we did a great party for her, and it was a time, and everybody was there. Teddy Pendergrass was walking in. It was all of that. Everybody was there. And the next day, the newspapers wrote about the fact that Aretha never arrived, how she had stood up all of these people at her own party. So I said, but Clive, that information is not in her file. Why you did not tell anybody about that until my faux pas? Oh, come on. So that's how that happened. So that's partially to blame for on y'all.
Well, I have to tell
And
you
there
both.
was always, and Jackie,
Yes.
go ahead, David, I'm sorry.
No, I have to tell you both that I actually was there. So here's what happened. Here's what happened. So this is Aretha had won a Grammy. So it was a Radio City Music Hall. She had won a Grammy that year. This is like the second or third year, probably about the second year she was with ARETHA. So something really early on, right? And I was there with a friend of mine. We were waiting outside. I think, now let me ask you a question. Was the World Trade Center ever anywhere else other than downtown? Because where this building was literally, wherever this was across the street from the Radio City Music Hall.
That's the Rainbow Room.
The Rainbow
There's
Room.
another story about the
Rainbow.
Room.
Exactly. Anyway, so here I'm waiting with this friend of mine, and I said, well, let's just wait till Aretha arrives. And so she literally arrived. I said, hello, Miss Frank. She said, hi, David. How are you? I'm good. I said, well, I'll be up in a minute, Oh, no, it was. My friend had not arrived. I was waiting for him to arrive, but I was there. And so she got into the building. And the next thing I knew, like less than 5 minutes later, she came out the building. And I thought, well, that's weird. So I can't go all that way up there. And so then when my friend arrived, we went up there. And so the party for Aretha, there was no Aretha. So you're right, Teddy Pendergrass was there, Dion was there. I mean, it was, and they were trying to find a reason to explain why she wasn't there. And Clive was there. And that was my first experience of Aretha would not get in the elevator. She found out what floor it was on the Rainbow Room. Like you said, it was the top of the building. She's like,
now tell me if that's not a story that should not have reverberated through the building. It should be in the annals of history that we did not have that information in the file.
It should have been
true. And the other information that everybody...
Yes.
Yeah. The
I
other
think I knew it
information
by the
too.
time I got there. I think they made it clear by the time I got there. But what's also funny is Clive if she was in town and Clive was having a party at his home, which of course was the penthouse on Park Avenue and 50, he would invite Aretha and she would come to the party, But guess where she would attend the party? In his Rolls Royce on the street. She would literally come to the party dressed for a party. They would send the food down. And all of the guests would come one by one and get in the car with her. I'm not.
Oh my God, this is the first I've ever heard of that. That is
that is hilarious.
Sharon, they would all go down and sit in the car with her. And then after their time was up, they would leave and somebody else would come down and get in the car.
That is
That's radio content. Karaoke Rolls Royce with Aretha Franklin.
Right.
That is hilarious.
I wish she had gotten over her fear of flying. And
That's what I was just about to say.
Been able to really enjoy touring overseas in her later years because she had
the money.
But
I mean,
Audrey, it wasn't just flying.
Didn't we all get calls
just
at the label? We all got calls from Europeans that wanted her to tour. They were offering a lot.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I think I got a call. The Princess Trust. They were going to put her on the ship.
Yeah.
They were like, "We'll send her over."
Absolutely.
The Queen Elizabeth. She was like, "Nah, that's even too high."
Audrey, I
remember
Audrey,
that. Yeah.
Audrey, it wasn't just the height. I mean, it was also the air conditioner when she did concerts. I remember when she first she launched the first VH1 Divas. It was built around her, and it was at the Beacon Theater. You guys probably remember that. Yeah. Okay. So I was.
Yeah.
Right. I was there with her, and she had told me. She said, Gwendolyn, make sure you call Ken Ehrlich's office and make sure that they don't have the air conditioner on. Now, Dick Allen, her agent, had already talked to him and told him to make sure, the air is turned down, blah, blah, blah. So when we get there, she walks on stage and she felt some air and she turned around and got back in her car. And she said, let Ken Ehrlich know that I will be in my car for 15 or 20 minutes and they need to fix this air. So that was an ongoing situation with her with performance.
That's because of the vocal cords.
Her voice was definitely.
It's about the voice. I did it when I was still at ARETHA'S. There was a show that was taping, and this was Atisha Fine, Ken Ehrlich, and Bonnie Raitt was on the show. And it was duets. It was Aretha Franklin duets. And when we were at the rehearsals at the SIR studios, Bonnie Raitt, again, you're good at what you do. You're not the best. Aretha's the best. So anybody I had issues with photographers, Annie Leibovitz, we had issues with a photo shoot. You're good, Annie Leibovitz. You're great even, but you're not the best. So when you are the person that's working with somebody who is the best, and that's not even up for discussion. Aretha Franklin is the best vocalist ever. You have to acquiesce a bit. You have to take the back seat. Let your ego or whatever. So anyway, Bonnie Raitt, Aretha walked onto the rehearsal stage at SIR, and Bonnie Raitt had these fans because there was no AC, and there were the fans, and that was it. She and Bonnie Raitt did not listen. So Bonnie Raitt, Aretha was like, these fans have to go, and Bonnie Raitt, but I'm so hot, and she was like, this show is called Aretha Franklin Duets. Okay. And she let her know. And then the night of the taping, this was crazy. And I feel so bad for Teddy, her son Teddy. So the night of the taping, and it was edited out, so it makes it even worse. So the night of the taping, it wasn't a live show. They go and do their song. And Aretha's still mad at Bonnie Raitt. Bonnie Raitt steps forward to do a guitar solo in the middle of the song. And then steps back, and the audience is clapping for the guitar solo. And Aretha says, "Ladies and gentlemen, on guitar, my son Teddy." And poor Teddy was like deer in the headlights, like, "Oh my God!" So Teddy's, it's like, "What do I do?" So he kind of awkwardly takes a bow, and it's even worse because when they edited the show, they edit out the part where she says, where Aretha says, "Ladies and gentlemen, on guitar, my son Teddy." So after Bonnie Raitt does her guitar solo, Teddy's bowing, so he looks crazy. But I was like,
"Oh my God!"
We talked about how lovely a person she was, and how generous, and how gracious, and how kind. But be clear, she was not one to play with.
No, not at all. I have a true story about that.
Go ahead.
Okay, here's my true story. We were about to do her album with The Rose Is Still a Rose.
Yes.
She wanted to do the Essence magazine cover. And Gordon Chambers had said, LaJoyce, I'm sorry, they shot it down. I said, they shot down Miss Aretha on the cover? May I remind you that without Miss Aretha paving the path, you would not have the other artists to put on your cover musically. So he said, LaJoyce, I just don't know what to tell you. So Miss Aretha kept asking me, when are we doing Essence? When are we doing Essence? She knew I was actively working on it. And then finally I had to tell her the truth. And she said, will you please pen a letter to me, for me, on behalf of me, to the chairman, to the publisher.
It was Susan Taylor, I believe, right?
No,
at the time.
She said the publisher.
Right.
Susan was the
Ed
editor.
something. What was his name? Ed something.
Ed, yes.
Ed Lewis.
So I wrote the letter, killer letter, and Susan got called on it. And Susan called me, caught me in my office on a Friday night. I was staying late doing paperwork, and then I was going to go to the Queen of Fua sweat lodge that night. I'll never forget. So the phone rings, my assistant's not there. I answer the phone, and it's Susan who's going to try to rip me a new behind. And I'd say, I need you to pause right there, because I operate at behest of the Queen. You all told her no, and I got wind of that, and I had to share that information with her. And she said, I need to ask you a question. Did Aretha say no to coming to the Essence Festival, or did her management or you all at ARETHA'S say no? And I told her, honey, have you ever worked with the Queen? No one speaks for her.
Right.
I could not believe I was being asked that. And she said, well, if you find out with me. And I'm like, are we negotiating whether or not she's coming to a concert versus being on the cover of the magazine for the release of her new album? I said, why don't we forget the whole thing? Because if I needed, and I eventually had to relay that to her, because she kept wanting to know the status. And then when I finally did tell her, you know what she did, you all?
But it hurt her. It did.
It deeply.
But you know what? But let me say this. I had a similar story to LaJoyce, but it was with Ebony, and she had how many Ebony covers over the years? And it was just during that time where, you guys worked with Aretha when she was 50 and under. When I started working with her, she was much older. So the demos had changed, and they were not putting that age group on the covers of anything. I mean, she was still getting the cover of Jet magazine, but she was not getting Ebony. And she had an issue with that. We had to deal with a similar situation. So, and that's also the time, David, that's also the time where there was a big shift to digital. And artists of that era did not understand that. They wanted a physical, they wanted a tangible cover. I said, well, what about doing something? And they didn't understand that.
But I wanted to they were right when you consider that the digital format was going to be more directed at a youthful audience. You would have thought that the physical format, just as CBS Morning with Gayle King, is for the older audience. Quite frankly, their digital platform is definitely more youthful driven. Their people are younger on that show, but nevertheless, that should have been you would have thought would have been their line of thinking for Essence magazine and the others. That was foul. They did wrong on that.
They did.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, David.
I just want to share with you, when you mentioned about Bonnie Raitt, so I want to share with you a story which most people don't know about because they weren't there. This is because Bonnie and I were on the board of the Rhythm and Blues Foundation, which of course was started by actually Ruth Brown, the Atlantic artist from back in the 50s, and the whole story behind how that got started with Ahmed Erdogan. Anyway, so the Rhythm and Blues Foundation was an organization that Aretha loved. I mean, she loved that organization.
Oh, yes, she did.
And partly why she loved it was because it gave her an opportunity to reconnect with some of those artists that she had been on the road with in the 60s that were not on the same, kind of stature, but at later in her career, but were her kind of people on the road. I mean, I remember, people like Gene Chandler, and she would say, "Oh, you remember when we were on the?" I mean, she loved the Rhythm and Blues Foundation, really loved it. So this one year, and I'd have to try to remember which year it was, but it was somewhere it might have been the early 2000s. So Aretha's coming to New York because the Rhythm and Blues Foundation is giving a special award to Ahmet Ertegun. And so I saw Aretha before, and make sure she was all right. And she was there with Ruth Bowen, and so she goes up and gives a speech, and she knows that there are two other female artists in the audience, Dion and Natalie Cole. She knows that they're there. And so Aretha is up there, and she's saying, I did this organization, the Rhythm and Blues Foundation has done so much for all the legacy artists, because we have been doing doing a lot of work, making sure people got financial assistance and so forth. She says, so I'm gonna pledge right now. I'm pledging $50,000 to the Rhythm and Blues Foundation right here. So then she says, she turns around, she looks at Ruth Bowen, and I was sitting next to Ruth. She said, Ruth, do you have your checkbook with you? Do you have the checkbook with you? So Ruth is like, and Ruth turns to me and says, I don't have no $50,000. So she says, no, I'll work it out, Aretha. So then Aretha says, okay, now I know there's a couple of other ladies in the audience, Dion and Natalie. She says, now, I challenge you to meet my pledge.
Oh my goodness.
That's a good old church.
They both wanted to go. They wanted to disappear to the floor.
Okay.
Because they didn't do nothing. They didn't stand up. They didn't do nothing. Because Aretha was like, yeah, come on now. I want to see you meet my pledge. Well, of course, she didn't pay the money that night because, as she said, she didn't have the check. 3 weeks later, this is absolutely true. 3 weeks later, a cashier's check arrived at the Rhythm and Blues Foundation office for $50,000 from Aretha Franklin.
Oh, there, Aretha. That's right.
And you know what?
Yeah, go ahead. And we didn't hear, and I'm sorry to say it. Now, I know Natalie's not with us anymore, and I know Dion's the queen of Twitter, but nonetheless, we never heard a peep from either of them, and we certainly didn't get no check. So that's my Aretha story about the Rhythm and Blues Foundation,
I just want to say that in the Baptist tradition, that is known as raising an offering.
Right.
And she had a front row seat to doing that. Now, this is how much she loved being at the R&B Foundation.
Yes.
This is when she hosted one of their celebrations.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, one year. This was the year she did it. And
yes.
Peeping out from behind me there is Barbara Shelley.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Yes. Well, I'm glad you mentioned Barbara LaJoyce, because she was actually the first publicist that I worked with at ARETHA'S with Aretha in 1980, 1981. And I had known Barbara from before she was with ARETHA. She had worked with another organization, Howard Bloom organization. But anyway, so she was actually Aretha's first publicist at ARETHA. And, they had an interesting relationship, on and off. But I can tell you this. Barbara Shelley arranged, when she wasn't at ARETHA at the time, she arranged for me to go to Detroit to do the interview with Aretha around the Who's Zoomin' Who album. Because I had to do a bio, and but I do have to share one because I wanted to lead this into cooking. So I want us to talk about Aretha and cooking, but so and one other thing. So I get to, she was living in Bloomfield Hills, the first house she got there when she moved back to Detroit. And she was, we were sitting in the living room, and she started singing. She was singing around. She was making some food. She says, "Now, David, you want some food? I'm making some spaghetti." And I said, "Well, Aretha, I'm a vegetarian." She said, "Oh, yeah, just like Glenn, who she had recently divorced." But anyway, that's beside the point. She said, "Yeah, I used to make vegetarian, food for Glenn." She says, "Oh, yeah, I can make it without any meat." So there's two other parts of the story that are hilarious. So while I'm sitting there, the phone rings, and it's Luther Vandross. And he's calling just because he's about to come to Detroit to do a show. And so she picks up the phone and says, "Hey, Luther, hey, when you gonna be here?" I've got some, you know, I've got this girl here in Detroit I want you to meet, you know, who she can make you some fantastic chicken and blah, blah. So she says to me, "David, do you want to say hello to Luther?" Because I knew Luther from when I lived in New York. I said, "Hey, Luther, how you doing?" He said, "Dave," he said, she keeps trying to hook me up with these women." And I said, and I didn't say nothing. I just said, "Well, no." But we're not going any further with that part of the conversation. But anyway, so here's the point. Aretha's doing the interview with me, and she's talking about being in Detroit, and we talk about who's zooming who in the song. And I said, "Well, you know, what inspired you?" She said, "Well, I go, you know, I'm a single woman. I would go to the clubs and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, and men would be really intimidated. They wouldn't really know how to talk to me. And then, you know, the whole zoom and who thing." I said, "Okay." She says, "No, what I'm really, I need to find a man who will rise to the occasion." And she looked me dead in the eyes when she said it. And I knew that was a double meaning. She wasn't just being like, so I looked at her, I said, "Are you sure you want me to write that?" And she just guffawed. She said, "Yes." And that was the part of Aretha that I loved. She was, you know, she was cheeky and sassy and funny. And see, that's what people don't know. They don't know that whole part of her. And because I was like, I don't know if I could put that in print because it was kind of obvious what she was saying. But the thing is that was also about the cooking. So that's a segue into you all telling, let's hear stories from you about Aretha in the kitchen, or Aretha and her food, and Aretha cooking for you, or just let's hear some food stories, ladies. Aretha and the food.
Well, I just recall that I had to always get her book. We had to work on getting her booked on Emerald Live and a lot of those shows back then. And where they used to have the artists come on and cook, and then, you know, they perform. So she loved doing those shows. And it was a period, I guess in the 90s, that
Yes.
we did a lot of that, you know. But she always wanted, you know, she would do the Today Show. I remember when Matt Lauer took her up there, and, you know, they asked for the recipe, and then they put the recipe online. And she always loved the peach cobbler and the macaroni and shrimp dish, and just a whole bunch of different things.
And the shrimp a la Ree. Remember that?
Yeah, the shrimp right, the shrimp a la Ree. That is hilarious. And you know, it got a lot of traction, of course, because they would put the, you know, the recipes on the internet. And that's what I remember mainly. And then she will always call around Thanksgiving. You know, you talk to her just before the holidays, and she'll say, "Gwen, what are you cooking?" Mm-hmm. And I said, "I'm not cooking, Aretha." And then she'll talk about what she was cooking for her family. And, you know, she really loved the holidays. And she really, really loved the holidays. And she loved talking about food, you know. I'm sure some of the other angels have some food conversations.
I remember when I was one of the partners of Motown Cafe, which was on 57th Street down the block from Arista. And Aretha was on the road, and I got this call from Hilton. "Hey, Trace, you know, like, we're pulling up in front of Motown Cafe in a few minutes. Aretha wants to see you and come in." And I'm like, "Oh, shoot." So I ran down the block from my office over to the cafe, and the tour bus pulls up in front of Motown Cafe. Everybody gets out. We set up a table for them and the whole nine, and they all order ribs, and ribs. So I'm sitting there, and we're all talking and stuff like that, and all of a sudden Aretha puts this, like, plate in front of me, and they're all eating the ribs, and they all start putting the bones, the empty bones, on the plate in front of me. And that was like, that meant you are picking up the check because we're not paying for this. You're treating us because we stopped by. So, you know, of course I did.
Oh my God.
And the last story that I'll say about this is when I was going to Detroit before Aretha was traveling, Catherine was her cook. Catherine was also the cook for her father, Reverend C.L. Franklin.
Yes.
So Catherine did a lot of the cooking for the parties and for, you know, the family. and she was just amazing. But Aretha would always make the peach cobbler, right, Gwen?
Yes, yes. But you know what? It was so funny. Robyn and I remember this story when she was working up with us at the firm, and she had gone up to Valerie Simpson's place, Sugar Bar.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the next day she called. She said, "Oh, that food is so good up there." I said, "Oh my God, I love it." We were talking about Valerie and her restaurant for about a half an hour. Well, Valerie had promised her, Valerie had promised her that she would make a bunch of food for the tour bus to go back to Detroit. Aretha decided to leave early because she was worried about the snow and everything. So she said, "Call Valerie, tell her, don't worry about it. We'll catch her next time, and how much we love the food, blah, blah, blah." Well, I didn't get to Valerie soon enough because her chef and the restaurant had prepared all of this food for her. I mean, it was a ton of food. And Aretha said, "Just tell her to send it to your office. I mean, we're leaving. We got to go." So the food came to our office. Remember, Robyn? And oh my God, when Valerie Simpson found out that Aretha had left town after she spent all that time putting all that food together with her staff, she was not happy. But we did get the food, right, Robyn? I said, "Oh my God!" I said, "Aretha, you're gonna." When Aretha called, I said, "Aretha, you're gonna have to call Valerie." They were not happy about this. She said, I know, but we had to get back. The weather's gonna get bad on the roads, and we had to get back." But that food was, and then of course at that point, Valerie couldn't ask for the food back because it was, already out.
Right.
So we had
I have a peach cobbler story. I have a peach cobbler story. I have a fantastic peach cobbler story. So here it is. It's 1980, and Aretha had signed to Arista, but she hadn't started working. She hadn't started promoting. The record wasn't out yet. And so one day, I was living in New York at the time. The phone rings, and she's on the other line. I pick up the phone. She says, "Hi, David." I said, because I recognize her voice immediately. I said, "Hi, Aretha." She says, "Listen, I've got a new album coming out on Arista. I signed to Arista." I said, "Yeah." She said, "I'd love you to hear it." I said, "Okay." Well, she said, "Can you come out to LA?" I said, "Well, yeah, sure, absolutely. I'd love to. I want you to hear it first before it comes out, and we do an interview and stuff." So I said, "All right." And she was living in Encino at the time, so I said, "Well, but the only thing is, I have a condition." So hear this silence of the phone. "Okay, what is it?" I said, "Well, I've heard so much about your peach cobbler. For so many years, I've been hearing about your peach cobbler. So I will come out to LA, but only if you will make me some peach cobbler." So she said, "Okay, so let me know when you're going to be here," and blah, blah, blah. So we set that all up because I basically was paying for the trip. There wasn't, at that point, she wasn't with Arista officially, so I had to find that, get out there myself. Anyway, so I get out there, and I'm staying somewhere in San Fernando Valley, and I call her up, say make sure that we're on for the interview that evening. She said, "Yeah." I said, "Now you did remember, didn't you?" And she said, "You mean the peach cobbler?" I said, "Mm-hmm." She said, "Okay, yeah, it's here." So off I got in the taxi, got to Encino, and so I go in, and she says, "Hi, David. Hi, how you doing?" I said, she said, "Now, do you want the peach cobbler first? So should we do you want to listen to the music first?" I said, "Well, let me have a little bit of the peach cobbler first."
So I could get into it, do it.
And then we did the interview, and she was still, at that point, still married to Glenn. So he was in the living room, and we would just sit there talking and play the music, and I made notes and everything about that album. And so we started talking about TV and things she was watching on TV and all. Anyway, so it's time for me to go. And I said, "Well, can I ask you for one more thing?" She said, "What?" I said, "Well, could I get a doggy bag?" And you have Aretha go, And so I left that interview. I think I still have the cover of Blues and Soul.
Oh,
yeah, Lady Soul Cooks.
oh,
Wow. I love that picture.
nice.
That's
I
the
mean-
United
Not
Together. That's the
Yes,
United.
exactly. That was exactly the time.
I know that
So,
picture.
so I did get to sample Miss Aretha Franklin's
That's a great album.
cover, and that's one of my biggest achievements in life.
I'm telling you.
But Angels, what about like her favorite restaurants in New York? You all have stories about Chun Li, La Bernadette, and Gwen. I know you have stories about that.
Wait, I want to tell you this cooking story.
Yeah.
Not only did she like to cook, she also liked to do her own grocery shopping.
Oh.
I was with her at her home for the farewell on the Today Show of Bryant Gumbel. And before everybody came, well, they wanted her to come to New York, and it was so last minute that she told them no, because she couldn't get the bus going that quickly, but they could come to her home. Well, they sent an entire crew to her home to set up the whole cable, the generator, the truck outside, the whole 9 yards to be outside. She invited over a few friends. So I got there really early in the morning, and she was in the kitchen preparing hors d'oeuvres for the friends and the crew. And she realized she didn't have something, and she said, "Oh, I need to go to the store." And I said, "Okay, come on, I'll drive you." She looked at me, you know the look, y'all. She said, "Get in the car." And we drove to the store. And she just shopped around, and people didn't bother. Hi, Aretha, hey. You know, she goes to the cashier and everything. And here I am trying to be of service and do things to her. And she was like, "If you don't just move out the way," and so I was awed by that. And then when we got back to the house, she was baking this date nut bread. So she took the date nut bread it was baked in a loaf pan, and then she sliced it bread in half like a pound cake, and then cut it in quarters and arranged it on a tray. And then she said, "This is the best thing you've ever had." So I reached for a piece of the date nut bread. She was like, "Not yet." Like, not yet. Doing what I have to do to the date nut bread. So then she took this whipped cream cheese and put the whipped cream cheese on the date nut bread. And then my face went, and she said, "Don't knock it." And she said, "One more thing." Then she took these sliced green olives and placed it on top of the cream cheese. Then she came to my mouth and popped it in, and then closed my mouth. And I was like, oh my God, the combination.
That's crazy.
Flavors. It was so good. And anytime I get a chance to make it, I do, because that was, and then we just had them out on the tray. And then the men who were putting the cables all over the place, and the one man who was assigned to run the thing out the back door by the kitchen, he got to sample it when it was nice and warm and toasty. Oh my God. So good. Yeah. And with her shrimp a la riz, one more thing with that shrimp a la riz, when I had it on on the Rolanda Watts show one time, and the bus did come in, and she was very specific about her ingredients. The garlic salt by Laurie's with the green top, right? And so then the PA who was running around looking for butter, before the show began, Miss Aretha looked at everything to make sure, and she looked at the butter and she went, like, "That's not what I ordered up." She said, "I need Fleischmann's butter." And the little girl came and said, "Oh, but I couldn't find any. Margarine is margarine, isn't it?" She looked at her. She said, the little girl put on her coat and said, "I'll be right back." She ran around until she could find the Fleischmann's butter. But she also made shrimp a la riz for the farewell for the Bryant Gumbel show, because she said when her friends come over, they always want to have the shrimp a la riz. And here we are at her living room.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it.
Yes.
I love it.
Wow. And I think that's very special, that, when you go to someone's home and then they know that there's going to be specifically one thing on the menu without fail.
Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing like Tracey just mentioned. What was that restaurant, Tracey, on the east side? It was another French restaurant. I know La Bernadette was on the west side, and Shangli and
no, it was a French side. Yeah, I know the one on across the street from the
I can't remember the name, LaJoyce, but she would always invite all of us out.
La Grenouille. I can't. My friend, I took Spanish. Le granule.
But it was always great because Aretha, when she stopped drinking, if you worked with her, you knew not to drink around her.
That's right.
So we'd be at these really nice restaurants and they have these big, huge flower arrangements. And I would either sit at her table or sit at a table next to her. And I was not always, a couple of times I managed to order a drink and put it right in front of the boss. And security, Hilton would say, Gwendolyn, you know better than that. I said, she won't see. And I remember all of that. She just loved dining in New York, going to the plaza have a tea sandwiches or the Ritz-Carlton in the lobby. It was
high tea. She loves the high tea, right, Gwen?
High tea.
High tea with the queen.
Mm-hmm. High tea with the queen. And she said, can you come down? She said, you and Robyn could join us. And we would run right on over to the plaza or to the Ritz-Carlton.
I want to ask David a question. I want to ask David something. I just want to turn it back to the music and this box set.
Yeah.
And Gwendolyn sent me a copy of it, and thank you, Gwendolyn. And I'm David. I was blown away by the liner. Like I'm just how did this project fall into your lap, and what did you write everything? Like, did you have any say in curating and picking the tune?
Absolutely.
So how did that?
Did you?
You did your thing with this, David. Like, honestly, as someone who is a huge fan of her music, not just as someone who worked with her, but I was a fan before I met her and remain a fan. I know her work. I know her work from the Columbia years, the gospel. Yes. I was just looking at the song selection is out of control. It's perfect, and the line. It's beautifully written. It's Pulitzer Prize winning material.
Well, I hope so. I hope it's Grammy winning with material.
You know what, Audrey? Audrey is right. You guys should make sure they submit for a Pulitzer. I mean, seriously.
It's funny. Can you just tell us how did this?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, I had my history with being an Aretha tape archaeologist, so to speak. Goes back to like 2005, around about that time, when I lived in Los Angeles, and Rhino Records, which was controls the Atlantic Warner Electric Catalog division of Warner Music Group, had hired me to go through the vaults. So that's how far back it goes, to the tape library in Burbank. Because what had happened, they had moved all the Atlantic Records tapes to Burbank. And a lot of them had not been cataloged properly, and they didn't have them in the database and the computer. So my job, I mean, you talk about a dream job. So for weeks, I had to go to the Burbank tape library and literally walk down the aisles of all the aisles and find every box with Aretha Franklin's name on it. Now, what they didn't have there were the actual finished masters, because they were in a secure location. So they didn't have the original albums because they had to preserve those in a separate place. But they had all the tape boxes, like outtakes and all kinds of session reels from about 1972 onwards. So I'm going down these aisles, and what they would do is I put all the tapes on a trolley. They would take them to the studio, and then they would transfer them so that we could hear what they were, because a lot of times we didn't know what they were. And so that was the beginning of me being an Arethacologist, as an archaeologist, so to speak. I will share one thing with you, which is unbelievable. So there was one box. Some of this is actually on the box set. A couple of the tracks are on the box set. There was this one tiny box, and it was just on a shelf, and it didn't have any proper labeling on it. And I looked at the front of the box, and it said Jerry Waxler. I didn't say Jerry Waxler. Jerry Waxler, from Ted White, and it had the address in Detroit. But no idea what's in the box. And they send the box over to be transferred. And in the box is home demos that Aretha did in 1966 after she had signed to Atlantic. Jerry Wexler wanted to get an idea of, well, what kind of things you want to do and blah, blah, blah. So there's home demos. And some of the demos included the first demo of I Never Loved a Man, The Way I Love You, which of course became her first massive Atlantic hit, or first massive hit. And then a few other things, including, because Aretha did like to do show tunes. I don't care what people say, it was Columbia, blah, blah. No, it was Aretha Franklin who liked doing the show tunes. It was not Columbia telling her you have to do them, blah, blah, blah. So
Broadway.
Okay, and on the tape was a version of Try a Little Tenderness, which she had done at Columbia, another version of it. There's just like there's her and a bass player and a drummer on the session. And she had this track, she did My Kind of Town, which is the Frank Sinatra song, but she did it as My Kind of Town Detroit is, and she makes these little references to the Four Tops and the Miracles. So of course they transferred all this material, and some of it came out in different compilations. So to fast forward, Audrey, so I had really been steeped in the Aretha, tape library and stuff like that. So in 2018, after she made transition, Rhino approached me and they said, well, we really want to keep her legacy alive. We want to do some stuff with her legacy. We know that you know her catalog like inside out. All right now, yes. So I said, yeah, absolutely. So they hired me to, all right now, showing all the pieces. So they hired me to work as a consultant. And they decided that, especially in line with the Genius project that was being talked about, that they wanted to do a box set. And we said what we would do is we would do a complete career retrospective, not just Atlantic, but everything. And it took the best part of a year to license everything, because we got some really rare stuff on there. So, and I said, well, let's not just do the usual greatest hits. Let's find pieces that demonstrate Aretha's artistry, not just the hits, but let's put the songs on there, but let's show Aretha at work. So some of the pieces that are on this box set, of which I'm most proud, are the way she's working out a song. So we got a few things like that, like A Brand New Me. You hear it kind of working out how the song's gonna go. Then the one that I love is Angel. So we have a version of Angel where she's starting to work on it, and then she turns around to the musician and says, no, you gotta come in where I do the turnaround. I mean, all that kind of studio chatter. And, for me, and also the version of Somewhere, which she did with Quincy Jones, where you can hear her when she's working out the piano part. And it's just, what I told Patrick, the guy who worked with me, Patrick Milligan, I said, what we must do is show Aretha Franklin, the musician. We know she's the greatest singer. We know that. People know that. They know that she is a genius when it comes to interpretation of song. There's no one who interprets a song like anyone else. But people forget that this is a musician. And she, we made sure that some of those tracks actually focus on that aspect of her artistry. And so one other thing to say about that is, I was talking to someone recently and I said, they said, well, who else, in Aretha's peers, I mean, who else? I said, well, there isn't anyone else. I mean, Gladys Knight doesn't play the piano. Dion doesn't play, Dion plays the piano, but she doesn't play it professionally. But, Patty, they're singers, and there's nothing to take away. No, I'm not taking anything away from them. I'm just saying what made Aretha separate from everybody was she was a musician. Right. And she drove those early Atlantic recordings. She's the one showing the rhythm section what to do. They didn't tell her what to do. In fact, it's famous on the I Never Loved a Man.
Exactly.
That she showed up at, Fame Studios in Alabama, and she sat at the piano and she said, this is how it's going to go. And they just fell in, and they were all like, who is this? Because at that point, she wasn't really known as a mainstream artist. So I wanted to make sure that was focused on. And then we got some great duets on there. Her with Smokey Robinson being in the video of her and Smokey Robinson. If you look at it, it was on Soul Train. You can see it on
Oh
YouTube.
my God,
It is
that was
so
amazing.
funny, and they're so being so like flirty with each other. Aretha just, I loved about Aretha. She could be look like kind of coy and being all kind of like, and you see that in the video of her with Smokey, and then there's the duet of her and Dion with "I Say a Little Prayer," about which we won't say much else other than you should listen to it, but not necessarily look at the video. Anyway, moving along. So
tell us about the Grammy nomination that you're under consideration for.
Well, after we finished the box set was supposed to come out in 2020, came out this year, and I don't have anything to do with the submission process, but Rhino did submit it for historical album, for liner notes, and for packaging. I think the three categories. And the only other thing I want to say. So we'll find out on Tuesday if it's been nominated. I don't know yet. We'll find out on Tuesday. I'll find out at the same time you all do. But here's the thing I want to say. As far as the notes are concerned, Audrey, I mean, I really, and everyone, I didn't want to just write the usual, this happened and that happened. And the best way I can describe how those notes were written is they were very kind of stream of consciousness. And I just tuned into my experience of Aretha as a person and that relationship, and I don't know how to explain what happened. It just kind of wasn't like anything else I ever wrote.
Oh, well, it's clear that it was from a place of love, David. And
absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I have to say that, when I look back at my own life and my career and everything that's happened, Aretha is the through line of my entire life. And I mean that in terms of in music. Because while I might have known and been somewhat closer to some of the other artists, I could not say hand on heart that I would consider any of them like a friend in the way that Aretha was, really. And we had some funny moments, especially toward the end, in the last few years of her being here, that I will never share them in print form or in any other way, because they were so funny. I would just say this: Aretha would call up and she'd say to me, "Hey, David." I said, "Hi, Aretha. What's the gossip?" And I would say, I don't know any gossip, Aretha. I don't know any gossip. I'd be kind of like, I don't know what to talk about. I don't know. She said, "Come on now, I know you know gossip. I know you do. I know you do." Then she would ask me about certain people. She said, "Well, what have you heard about so-and-so?" And I was like, what are you trying to ask me, Aretha? What are you trying to ask? And she loved that. I did not have that kind of relationship.
What's the 411?
With anybody.
What's the 411? But let me just say this, David. Let me just say this, David. Congratulations. When after Aretha passed and I started working with the state immediately after that, Rhino, you were already working with Rhino at that time.
Right.
But they called and say, well, working with you. And we were like, hands down, there is no one else out there, no other journalist other than David Nathan that knows Aretha, not only her, but her music, and I'm just so happy for you because
thank you.
You've never been nominated for a Grammy, and I hope this, this turns into a nomination.
Yeah. Well, I think it would be kind of like, I would just say that would be like the icing on the cake, so to speak, the jewel in the crown. I mean, I also know that, I just have to not be all like, it must get a Grammy. It's like, look, if that's what's going to happen, that's what's going to happen. And I just consider that just even the opportunity of doing this box set, regardless of Grammy nomination or not, is really the kind of jewel in the crown for me for my entire work and my whole career.
Yes.
I mean, there's nothing I could do at this point that would top that.
Yes. And
I think all of us give you our vote.
Definitely.
for
It
this.
really does position you, David, as the foremost leading journalistic expert on all things Aretha Franklin.
Yes.
Aretha, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I think we're almost coming to that time of our wonderful event together. Robyn, did you ever fix your thing? Did you ever fix the? Oh, well, we got to see you if we didn't get to hear you.
Robyn
Wait,
is such
before
a
we
great
go,
story.
we've got to talk about teaching Aretha how to text. Gwen.
Oh, Tracey. I tell you what. I still have, not in my phone, but I still have in my computer, one of my computers. I still have emails from Aretha, which no one will ever see, but they're all in uppercase, all caps, and some of them are so funny. I mean, they are hilarious. And yes, but when Aretha found, as you said, you tell us, what was it like when Aretha found technology?
We taught her how to text, which was a good and a
You
bad
taught
thing.
her how to text.
And Aretha always had, she always perfectly manicured her nails, right? Beautiful nails, beautiful hands. And she would get on the phone and she would start texting, and she would miss all of these letters, but in her mind, she's talking about it and she's texting, and you would get the text and you'd be like, what?
You know what? It's so funny because Tracey is so right. You have people like Michael Eric Dyson calling us. They wanted us to what is she really saying? Transcribe the conversation.
Translation, please. You and Gwen speak Riri language.
Oh my God.
It was hilarious, man. And I remember when computers first came out. She said, I don't want a computer in my house." And then it took a while for her to get. But once she got started with that, forget it.
We used to complain about faxing all the time, but I tell you, when Tracey started the text went to, I think it was text and then email.
Yep.
She started doing the emails, and that was really interesting as well.
She did the email first, and no, she did the email first, Gwen, remember? And then we taught her how to text. That was a big mistake.
And then Facebook, and then she on social media. Oh my.
And then
wait a minute.
She would write things and send them to us, and she would send them to me and Gwen and to whomever, and you would get them, and then you would try and transcribe it and translate it, and but don't send it back to her, because then she was like, "That's not what I said. I said this," and it'd be Aretha, it doesn't make any sense. Don't tell me, I know.
And let me tell you something else. One day she was telling me off. She sent me and she thought she was sending me an email. That's when she got exposed to Facebook.
Oh.
And let me tell you, it was crazy. She told me off and she thought I think she thought she was sending, she knew it was Facebook, but she thought it was a private message.
Oh no.
I got up that morning and I was reading my my Facebook messages. And my hands started shaking. And I called the young lady who I brought in and said, "Did you see?" She said, "Oh my God, yes, I saw that, but I didn't know what to do." I said, "Girl, if you don't pull that shit down right now from Facebook, we're going to have a major problem." But so that was the danger.
Yeah.
Because she wasn't just telling me off, she was telling other people off too. Facebook.
Like I said,
y'all missed that part. It was dreadful.
Yes.
Well, when you're that talented, you can get away with that kind of behavior.
Yes.
That's just how I.
No, we took the Facebook permission away from her, and we were the only ones that were allowed to use it.
Yeah.
Well, ladies, we're coming to the end of our wonderful session. I don't know. I was going to say any last thoughts, but we're about Zoom is about to
expire.
Click off. So I just want to thank you so much. Thank you so much. This has been such a delight.
Thank you,
and
David.
I know all the Aretha, the people who love Aretha are going to love this, because it really gives them an insight into the woman, not just the recording artist, but the person that we all work with and that we all got to know and love. And so thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm just so thrilled to be with Aretha's Angels.
Oh,
Thank you, David.
And we're
Thank
rooting for you for
Glad to be
Tuesday.
with you.
Thank you, David, and good luck.
Best of
Absolutely.
luck, David.
Tuesday.
Surprise.
All right, then. Okay, now. See you all.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.